You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. For this episode, I got to catch up with my friend Kim Gruenenfelder. You may remember her from the podcast when her book Hangovers and Hotflashes came out. Well, she has a brand new book that I have bought and I will be reading over Thanksgiving called My Ex's Wedding. I was a fan of Kim's long before I ever met her, so this is a real treat for me. And also, she is hilarious. Some of her other titles include A Total Waste of Makeup, Misery Loves Cabernet, There's Cake in My Future, Keep Calm and Carry a Big Drink, and Love the Wine You're With. I mean, come on, give yourself a treat. Heads up, our kids went to high school together, so we may refer to them a bit as they are both navigating college online. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. Okay, here's my conversation with Kim Gruenenfelder. Keep in mind, this was recorded the last week of September, so we recorded remotely, and any references to recent times may be outdated. And if we referred to the upcoming election, obviously it hadn't happened yet, so that is the context. Okay, here, have a listen. Let's just start, because I know we're just going to have so much to talk about. Okay, Kim Gruenenfelder, you are back. You were here, I want to say just a year ago with Hot Flashes and Hangovers, or was it Hangovers and Hotflashes?
Hangovers and Hotflashes. I think it was closer to 2 years ago. 1 to 2 years ago, something like that. Because our kids were still in high school together, so it was at least a year ago.
That's right, because now they are sophomores in college.
They are. It's weird.
It's so weird, except that they're home because of the pandemic.
Well, that's the weird thing is, you're recording early. My son's first day of college or first day back is today, and you wouldn't know from last night because, he's starting today, and last night was just like he was reading a book. It was just like every other night. So it's weird. COVID's a weird time.
It is a weird time because it's funny at this age, you kind of don't want to know what they're up to. And you kind of don't want to watch how they do college, like knowing how expensive it is.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I would be like, you better not be wasting 1 second. But as we know,
it's not only that. For us with COVID, it's that my husband and my son and me, like it's just us here. And that's the other thing is, he's still talking to friends via Zoom and stuff, but he's here a lot. We're all here a lot. We'll just leave it at that. We're all here a lot.
And fighting for the Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah, there's that. Like I'm talking to you right now. My husband's in a meeting downstairs, and my kids' classes are later in the day. So we'll all be fighting over Wi-Fi. And I didn't know until all of this COVID that Wi-Fi slows down when everybody's using it.
Yeah, I'll be texting everyone like I'm on a video meeting. Everyone move to your hotspot. It's your phone. So you already have another book out. You are prolific.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I already have a book out. It's called My Ex's Wedding. And
that sounds fun.
Yes, it is. It's a lot less serious than the last book. It's kind of a screwball comedy. And it's about a ghostwriter who it's set in 1998. And it's about a ghostwriter who meets her boyfriend's best friend from grade school. And the woman is named Isabella, and she is like one of the most famous women in the world. And that throws my character for a loop. And then Isabella's fiance walks in, and it's my character's ex-husband. And that's for a loop. And very quickly, Isabella decides to have my character, Sam is my character, Samantha, my character, ghostwrite her memoirs. And so Sam is suddenly sort of thrust back into her ex-husband's life, whether either of them want her to be or not.
Oh my God, it sounds terrible. Like to be sucked into a social circle you took a lot of effort to get out of.
Yes, that's actually, and that's part of what she talks about is, and I said it in the late 90s so that nobody had Facebook, nobody had social media. And at a time when you broke up with someone, that's it. They were exes. They were, some friend of mine years ago called it the ex-isle. Like they're in exile. They're with all the other ex-boyfriends on an island somewhere. It's exile. And with social media now, everybody, there's no way you can really get away from anyone. I mean, unless you really actively try to. It's just, if you had some of the same friends, you're just going to sort of be stuck sort of knowing what the person is doing with their lives. So in 1998, she wouldn't know anything. He would have been gone for years. And well, in my book, he has been gone for years. They don't know anything about each other. And when Sam comes back into this world, it's like friends she knew and are still friends with, he has to become friends with, and friends he was still friends with, she needs to sort of get back in touch with, including, the best man is a comic relief, and he's just the bane of her existence. And it's for the next week, I got to deal with this guy. Like when everybody comes into town, then you just sort of deal with your own life. And so that was the premise of the book. And I also decided to write a period piece, which is funny because to me, 1998 is not a period piece, but to other people,
right,
it is. And I used to be a screenwriter, and an old screenplay of mine from the 90s, I sent to a woman who's in her 20s, who said, it was a specific thing that she wanted. And I'm like, well, I have a screenplay for that, like similar to that, but that would have been more than 20 years ago. I'd have to rewrite it. And she said, well, send it to me, and let's go from there. And she called a few days later and went, oh my God, I love this so much. It's like I'm a kid again. I love all the references to swatches and answering machines. And, it's like watching a rerun of Friends. And I was like, oh, okay, well, great. So that was great because I didn't have to do anything with the script. But when I started writing this, I thought, well, let's do a rerun of Friends. Like, let's do, if you had to go to your ex-husband's wedding, and I mean, how would that look if if you literally haven't seen him in years? And in both cases, in Sam's case and in Dave's case, that's her ex-husband, they have different careers now than what they were planning on doing at 22. They have, they're living in different places than they thought they would. Like there's just so much that's changed between being, they got married at 22 and divorced by 24. And she's seeing him now that they're both 30. And it's a comedy. I mean, I'm making it sound like it's going to be The Big Chill. It's not. It's a comedy. But it's a little like The Big Chill in that you also bring back all these characters. It's like, well, what happened to him? Okay, his life went different. Like everybody's life went differently than they planned. And, and that is fine. There is what I consider a happy ending to the book. And, anybody who is 30, it could probably look at their life at 22 and go, oh yeah, I'm not doing what I plan to do at 22.
Who is?
I've had this discussion with my son because he kind of knows what he wants to do, but he doesn't have that plan that certain friends from college have. Mm-hmm. And I do this, and then my next step, and then my next step. And I mean, my experience was among me and my friends was that blew up. I mean,
yeah, well, nobody knows, and there is no formula and checklist, especially if you're going into the arts, right?
Exactly. If you're going into the arts, there's no way. I mean, if you're next going to law school or medical school, then yeah. But even then, you don't know which med school you'll get into. You don't know which city you're going to live in. You don't know if you go to law school, you don't know what law firm you'll be going to after that, or what kind of law you might want to study. So that's part of what gets talked about in the book too, is, life has a way of throwing things at you, some good, some bad, hopefully mostly good, but none of it's what it's supposed to look like when you're 22.
Never. I mean, hopefully you just keep saying yes until you wind up someplace you want to be.
Exactly. Oh, I should write that in my next book, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, you may write that
somewhere. Yeah.
That'll be the tweet. Now, I'm curious because it sounds like you've kind of returned to your roots. Because when we talked about the last book, you had taken a big departure and you were talking about middle-aged-ish women in their 40s. And that was that was controversial with your publisher. Yeah. I'm wondering how that went and if you thought, I'll go back to younger women, or if this was just the next story.
It went, you mean, how did it sell, or do you mean when I was writing?
Yeah.
It sold okay. It didn't sell as well as my other books, unfortunately, which, was hard on my little head. But I think
I loved it, for the record.
Thank you. And I mean, Hangovers and Hotflashes did have comical elements to it. I mean, I did talk about, I mean, if you look at the cover, it's a blonde with a bottle of champagne, just looking, crazed and
holding a fan.
It was a departure. I was trying to do more of a literary book. And that was my 6th book I've published. So, I just wanted to do something a little different. With X's Wedding, I kind of wanted to go back to, not just back to my roots, but make it even more of a comedy. And so, yeah, it was definitely an easier book to write because I don't know. I wasn't the topic of how do you deal with your ex? And if you did actually love your ex, like how do you bring them back into the fold and make that work for your life? Like that's a more serious topic. But for the most part, this is a comedy. I've got, he's engaged to one of the most famous women in the world. And she's crazy. And she's planning, this is actually her 5th wedding that she's planning. And she wants it to be the wedding of the century. And she wants it totally different from all of her other weddings. And so I get to write about, how over the top people go with weddings, which is always a fun thing to write about because it's so ridiculous how people
so insane
with weddings. And that I like to write about. And with COVID, this was written before COVID, but with COVID, everybody's doing these micro weddings. And there's a part of me that just thinks, I get why people are sad about it. And another part of me that thinks, but if you can, if your wedding is just 10 people and you have the opportunity to just be with the 8 people that you most want with you, and you have a built-in excuse not to turn this into this $100,000
circus.
Yeah, this circus. I've been to those kinds of weddings that are absolutely stunningly beautiful, but it's just all of it gets crazy and family members are fighting and you end up, and the whole thing about this is a trend. I don't think any of my friends have done it, but you don't just need the ridiculous, $10,000 dress. You also need the $3,000 cocktail dress afterwards. And it's like, why are we doing this? And if it makes somebody really happy, great. But my experience with wedding guests is their opinion of the wedding is whether they got laid at the end of the night or not.
It's very simple formula.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people who seem to care more about the open bar than whether the bride is wearing a second dress at the beginning, at the end of the evening.
Well, it's gotten so out of control. And I wonder if this is going to be kind of a reset on the wedding industry to kind of inject some sanity into it. I remember I had a great wedding. I had a terrible marriage, but I had a great wedding. And driving away from it, it was a 150 person thing. We had a band. It was great. And driving away, we were like, we didn't need to do all that. Like, it's so not necessary. It was the best wedding ever, but you don't need to spend all that money and have all those people. And it's too much.
No. And I loved our wedding. We had about 70 people, because we were going to elope. So naturally we had 70 people.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I had a great time. But we had originally planned on eloping, and basically a lot of people said, but I want to go. And they were ready to follow us anywhere we were going. And so we made the decision that, okay, well, we've got to do something here, but we threw together the wedding so last second. We threw the wedding together so last second, people were convinced I was pregnant. There's nothing like getting married and having that great day sort of overshadowed with, so is there any news? Any good news? It's like, is this good news? Is this news? Do we have news? But I loved it, but we had the advantage because we knew when we were going to elope. And we had already planned our honeymoon out. We were going to go elope in Hawaii. And we just decided, all right, let's keep all the honeymoon plans where they are. Where can we get married in the next couple months? And, but that was the first time I had really seen this before I wrote any of my books. That was the first time I had really seen the wedding industry and the way it also encourages women to spend more money than, in my mind, they should a lot of the time, with this idea of, well, you only get one wedding day. And the Isabella character with X's wedding, Isabella actually you only get it 5 times, or more. We don't know what happens to her next.
So how did you research?
How did I research the X's wedding? Or how did I research weddings? The weddings, I looked at what people were doing in the 90s, and I sort of went even fast. Basically, Isabella decides she's having a winter wedding, and she decides that she doesn't want to pick a theme, so it just has to do with winter. So she has Christmas trees, she has Valentine's Day stuff, she has a skating rink, she has Groundhog Day. It was there, so she's trying to figure out what to do with the groundhog. She just goes completely over the top, and that was based on looking at $1 Million weddings I saw at the time, and I don't have her on an elephant because I actually have a different book with a wedding where he's not on. There's an Indian wedding in my book. Which book? How weird! I can't remember all my books. Okay, Keep Calm and Carry a Big Drink starts with an Indian wedding, and he's riding a horse into the wedding, and that's the opening of the wedding. Is there's actually a runaway groom who runs away on the horse, and to ruin it for everybody, but the book has been out for many years, so spoiler alert. It turns out he is Caucasian, he's American, and he had never ridden a horse before. And he's not a runaway groom. He just gets on the horse and spooks the horse and goes charging away. And, because for an Indian wedding, you can use an elephant or a horse, and the groom comes in on either an elephant or a horse. And
yeah.
The joke on that was my main character in that book is the maid of honor, and she has to go and get him. And basically it's like, what happened? She knows what happened. She's like, you can't ride a horse. No. Did you tell the bride you couldn't ride a horse? No, I didn't want her to know that. Okay, well, you've pretty much been the first hour of your wedding. Off we go.
Now she thinks you left her.
Yeah, exactly. And they begin their wedding with the bride. The bride finds him and just gets on the horse, and because she knows how to ride a horse, and brings them back to the wedding. So the research I did, basically just looking at what were the trends. And it wasn't just a typical wedding. It wasn't just Vera Wang was very popular in the late 90s. I wasn't just writing about Vera Wang. I was writing about what if you had $1 million in 1998? What would that wedding look like? And I remember Jennifer Aniston and Brad Pitt got married around that time, and they got married in Malibu, and the character gets married in Malibu, and just sort of looking at what did they do? And they didn't go over the top like that. They weren't ridiculous like that.
I'm thinking Melissa Rivers. Winter
I forgot about Melissa Rivers. Oh, Joan was happy to throw that wedding, wasn't she? Oh my God. And
it was the social event of the year.
Oh my God. Yes. Yes. Or the Liza Minnelli wedding when, years ago, that was just over the top and
ridiculous.
Where are they registered? Neiman Marcus, they were registered for stuff back in whenever the 90s or the 80s even. It's and it's a $1,200 super tureen. Oh, I'm sure you'll be using that. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I'm sure you need it.
Yes. Oh, you totally need it. That I'm not sure if I've talked about that in one of my books. I should. The wedding registry, that's a whole other set of, no, but you need this. And it's all of us seem to have a fondue pot now because we thought we needed this. Oh no, when I get married, I'm totally going to be throwing fondue parties. It's important I have my fondue pot. I did one fondue party with 2 other couples, and because we all had a fondue pot, and so we all made it. So we did a ton of fondue kind of as a joke because none of us had ever used our fondue pot.
Can you imagine having a fondue party now? Never am I sharing fondue with people.
Oh my God, I never even thought of that. Yeah.
Gross.
Yeah, I do a Christmas party that includes a huge buffet, and I don't know when I'm going to be allowed to have either again. I said to a friend of mine recently about my Christmas party, well, I'm keeping the tree up until I'm allowed to have the party. And he's like, I can't tell if that's delightful or just stubborn and crazy. And I thought probably both, but
Yeah, don't let it burn down your house.
No, well, we have a fake tree. We actually have our Halloween tree up right now for those of you who, we're recording in October, guys. We have our Halloween tree up. So it's our fake tree. It's our fake Christmas tree, but we have orange lights and we have pumpkin ornaments and it's very silly.
I knew someone who did the same thing, just kept the tree up all year round and decorated it for whatever holiday was happening.
Yeah. We were going to do that. And I got kind of tired of having a tree in the house all the time, but we start in September. Actually, we put up the tree, usually Labor Day weekend, and then just stays through January. And,
feels right. Okay. Now your character's Sam. Now I've read all your books, but being that I have no memory anymore, I can't remember anybody's names. Is Sam a revisiting of a character from a prior book,
No,
or is she a whole new
she's
character?
a whole new character. She's a whole new character. I actually started the book back after I'd written Makeup. I had a 2-book deal with St. Martin's initially, and they wanted, they had bought Makeup, but then I had to come up with a book idea, and my editor and I kind of together came up with the idea of a ghostwriter, because at the time, and it may still be true, at the time, so many books on the bestseller list were actually not written by the person who supposedly had written them. And particularly celebrity autobiographies are not usually written by the celebrity. And I know some of the Kardashians have written books, and I have a feeling that they've now written more than they've read. So that's something hard for most people to say. So we decided to do a ghostwriter, and I created this character, and we decided she was going to have an ex-husband, and we decided in Makeup, I had a wedding that I had talked about. And so, my editor wanted another wedding. And so I came up with this whole idea. And then when I started it, Makeup ended up doing really well. And they quickly said, no, you're going to just do a sequel to Makeup. And so I had this idea in my head that I just kind of never finished doing anything with. So yeah, she's totally new. All the characters are totally new. When I was writing it, I did add Drew, who is a character from Total Waste of Makeup. He makes an appearance in the book, which was kind of fun because I didn't tell. He also makes an appearance in Hangovers and Hotflashes, and I didn't tell any of my readers he was making an appearance. And I got a couple emails that were very funny about, oh my God, Drew's back, and because he's just in this ridiculous scene, and because it's 1998, like. He's not famous yet. He's an actor who's done, like what Brad Pitt would have been in with Thelma and Louise. Like he hasn't quite hit yet, but if Brad Pitt had walked in pre Thelma and Louise, you'd be like, who's that? He's good looking, a little weird, but good looking, not Brad Pitt, my character Drew. So yeah, she's all new, other than, like I said, there's a little guest star appearance from Drew.
Now, have you done any ghostwriting?
No, I've actually been up for a couple of jobs, and most ghostwriters, because I've been up for celebrity jobs, and most ghostwriters are usually reporters, and that's how they start out. I do know some people who are ghostwriters who do novels for famous authors. But I've never done that. To me, writing a novel is so hard. I need to put my own name on it. I can't. And I did a couple of years ago, I did interview with a few celebrities about writing a novel with their name on it. And it just was like, then their name's on it. And I wrote it, But I would love to do some ghostwriting. There's actually one celebrity who we were very close to meet. She's somebody who I knew personally, and we were very close to doing a book deal. And it may happen at some point, and I would love to do it because she has a very interesting story. She just doesn't have time to write a whole book, and she has no problem with what a lot of people do is they'll say that they wrote it and their name will be on the cover. And then if you look in the acknowledgments, it'll say, thank you to such and such for organizing my thoughts. And that's the code word for I had a ghostwriter. Whereas the person who I was talking to was like, oh no, your name should be on the cover. I'm not writing this. Like, I'm telling you,
let's be real.
Too. Yeah. Which I liked because that's also part of why. Like, I knew if somebody was saying that meant that they were honest enough that I'd be getting their true story if I helped them write it. This is not somebody who's hiding anything or trying to, change stuff around to make them look better. So we'll see. Maybe in the future. I like the idea of ghostwriting. The people who I've interviewed with are all people who have interesting stories, way more interesting than my life is. And it would sort of give me something new to write about that had nothing to do with me. So I think it would be cool.
That'd be fun. Okay, now, and I just learned this morning that your day job is directing audiobooks?
It's not my day job, but I do it part-time. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Side job?
Under audiobooks, I go under the name Kim Smith, and I've actually directed several celebrities. I'm not saying they have ghostwritten at all. I'm not going to get into that. But I've worked with some really cool people. And also, I directed Jennifer Garner last year on this reporter's book, Tightrope, which is a really good book. And I can't remember if the reporter's been nominated for a Pulitzer, if he's actually won, but she came in and did Tightrope, which is a nonfiction story basically about the American economy right now and the struggling working class, and nice upbeat book. But it's a really good book. There were a lot of things I learned. The great thing about directing is it's a part-time gig. I read a book, I go into the studio, I direct the author. A lot of the time I direct the author by going, okay, so start reading. I'll help you out when we get to what you don't know or whatever. And like in something like Tightrope, you have real people and you gotta get their names prepped. You have to know their names ahead of time, like learn that for the reader. But yeah, I've directed, Mark Maron did a couple of autobiographies. I directed Tyra Banks in her autobiography. Well, it wasn't an autobiography, but Tyra Banks did a book with her mom and they were both in the studio, which was one of my favorite directing jobs I ever had, because she was just insanely cool. Her mother was cool. She just, and again, this wasn't a book I would have normally read. This was not a person I really knew too much about. And, I'm constantly observing people. So also things like, Tyra showed up basically in sweats, no makeup, and a do-rag. And she was just stunningly beautiful. I mean, she just walked in and it was like, oh, that's why you get paid millions of dollars. Cause I like it just stunningly beautiful, just like everyone noticed. And the sound engineer, who's the person who does the recording, we talked about at one point, he's like, she's so nice. She doesn't have to be that nice. She looks like that. I'm like, I know, right? So she was great. But yeah, I direct under the name Kim Smith, so that, it'd be weird if it was Kim Gruenenfelder as whatever. I've directed, I don't know how many people are listening to books on this podcast, but Samantha Irby, I've directed all of her books and she's amazing and just so funny. And so it's a nice extra thing to do, because it's not a day job exactly. I don't go in every day. It's just another artistic project I work on, and it's a totally different thing to do. And it's also social, although now, the reason we were talking about during the pre-thing, now everything's being done, or most things are being done not in studio. We're actually doing it via Zoom and recording via Zoom. And so it's nice not to have to drive anywhere, but I miss the going into the studio experience. I miss all of the grabbing a cup of coffee and getting ready for the day and all of those things. But yeah, that's my day job. Kim Smith. If you hear Kim Smith, that's me.
Well, I've interviewed someone who reads audiobooks for a living. So it's interesting to hear the other side of it. Like, how much do you find yourself, like, are you directing the acting of it all? Are you saying, go back and that didn't quite work?
That's a good question. With certain people, like, with an autobiography, like, I know it's Chelsea Handler. I directed Chelsea Handler in her autobiography. I didn't direct very much because it was all people she knew. It was all stories she knew. And I kind of just let Chelsea Handler read me a book for a few days. There wasn't a lot of directing.
Nice work if you can get it.
It was really fun, actually. The other thing is my experience with celebrities, and I do write about celebrities. In my ex's wedding, the celebrity is not particularly nice. She's a kook, and she's not a particularly nice one. But for the most part, I think most celebrities are nice. And I mean, because they wouldn't get where they were if you're working with 100 people and you're an asshole. That's gonna follow you, and at some point you won't keep working. So I find most people are pretty nice. In terms of directing fiction, yes, then I will sometimes talk about characters and how they're doing the characters. But even then, a lot of the time, there are two types of people who narrate audiobooks. One is a celebrity, and Samira Wiley, for example, did a fiction book and is a celebrity and is an actor, and you will direct them a little bit, but a lot of the direction just has to do with, so this is how you read a book, and this is what to expect, and this is what to do. There are other actors who are SAG actors who this is what they do for a living. And they're like voiceover actors who just do voiceovers. The same thing is true with audiobooks. Like, this is what they do for a living. And it's a very small group of people, and they just kind of keep doing books over and over again. And it is great work if you can get it, although it's also work. It's amazing to me how many people will say like, oh, I'm thinking of getting into audiobooks. And it's like, unless you know how to do it, it's a hard job to do, actually. I mean, I can.
Oh, yeah. This woman's advice was before you even start, go read something out loud for an hour. See how you feel after that. You might find after 20 minutes, it's no fun.
No, it's not. And it's very specific. I mean, when I'm in the booth, when I'm on the other side of the glass, I can stretch, I can put my arms up, I can, I can stretch, I can move. If you're an actor, you have to be exactly as far from the microphone the entire time. So you're not just reading, you're also barely able to move for, about an hour and a half at a time, hour to an hour and a half. And then people will, take a 10-minute break to sort of stretch and do whatever. But it's a hard job. And when it comes to the fictional books and people who are good at reading the fiction, I mean, it's like doing a play. I mean, you've got to get all those characters prepped and ready. And you've got me talking about the characters ahead of time and deciding on stuff. And it's like, you're doing that. And then a few days later, it's over and you got to go prep your next character. So it's a hard job. I would not want to be an actor. Directing, I have a lot of fun directing. I would not want to act and do the acting. It's like, that looks hard. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. Okay. What are you working on a new project?
I'm working on a couple of new projects. So I will tell people to sort of wait for this. I have one. So my first two books were called Total Waste of Makeup and Misery Loves Cabernet. And St. Martin's chose not to do a third in the series. But Amazon, if I want to do an Amazon exclusive, I can do a third in the series. So I have been starting that. It's not done, but it's kind of something I came back to. And I have I'm looking at my giant whiteboard right now as I'm talking to you. And I've sort of got everything mapped out. I did, at this point, almost 2 years ago, I had never gotten a fan, what do you call it? Fan list or a fan, email list of people who want to know when your next book comes out. I forget what they call it, but I had authors and my agent say you need to compile this list. And so on Facebook and Twitter, on social media, I just said, I'm trying to compile this list of people's emails and it's to tell you when my next book comes out. But if you join the list, I will write a couple of pages about whatever two characters you want from any of my old series, and I'll just update them. And I had a thought of what they were going to say. Over 90% said, I want to know what's happening with Drew and Charlie, which are the characters from these my first two books, Total Waste of Makeup and Misery Loves Cabernet. And Drew is the one who also makes a guest appearance in both My Ex's Wedding and Hangovers and Hotflashes. So one weekend, I just did a chapter. It wasn't a chapter. I just wrote a few pages of it. Was my Misery Loves Cabernet ends on Thanksgiving night. And she has just broken up with the guy that she was seeing in the book. And she also sees another guy who she dated both in makeup and dated during part of the time of Misery Loves Cabernet. And it ends with her basically breaking up with everybody and just deciding she was going to be alone. And I thought that was a great way to end a book. There were some fans who were not happy with that. But I thought the idea of quit defining yourself by who you're dating and just love yourself was very empowering. And so that's how I decided to end it. That is not a typical way to end rom-coms. And I get why people were upset, but I personally want to do that. So I wrote these few pages based on the Friday morning after Thanksgiving. And Charlie wakes up at 6 a.m. to, her door knock, somebody knocking on her door. And she opens up the door and it's Drew in a tuxedo, inexplicably, saying, is the comma after 3 zeros or 4 zeros? And it's like, what? In a check, is the comma after 3 zeros or 4 zeros? And then he holds up this $1 million check and he's like, because this doesn't look right. And she said, what is happening? And so that I just did this, I basically continued how the book ended. I did a scene where we started okay, well, it's Friday morning and people move on. And Drew is now inexplicably in a tux and has a check for $1 million. What? Because he's also, for listeners, Charlie is the personal assistant of a movie star who is very nice, but is a little nutty. And things like him showing up at 6 a.m. in a tuxedo would not be out of character for him at all. She just has no idea why he's doing it. So anyway, so I wrote this and I just had so much fun writing it that I turned it into a first chapter of a next book. And so, so I'm working on that. I don't know if it'll be my next book, but I've been having fun sort of, revisiting these characters I haven't seen in a lot of years. And then I have a couple of other books that I'm working on, but it's interesting for me being a writer. Normally my editor would sort of, I would pitch a bunch of projects and my editor would pick one, and I was getting paid to write this next book. And so that was what I would do. The benefit of doing things through Amazon now is that you can kind of do it whenever you want, and you can kind of pick your own stuff. There's no pitch meetings. There's no, writing 20 ideas down and emailing them to a bunch of people and seeing like who says what. So it allows me to have a couple of different projects going on. And the other two things I'm working on both sort of have twists. So I don't want to talk about them too much because
don't give it away.
Yeah. Like once the book is out or on its way, I can talk about it. But the other two things I'm working on are both have twists to them. So they're going to be a little hard to describe too. And so that's what I'm working on now.
Can you talk a little bit about your process? Because you gesture to your whiteboard. How do you work out a story?
How do I work out a story? That's a good question. For most of my books, I have my beginning and I have my ending, and I come up with scenes that I want to write and things that I want to see within the book. So, like when I did Keep Calm and Carry a Big Drink, I knew I wanted, that's a sequel to There's Cake in My Future. And There's Cake in My Future was told from 3 different women's point of view, and it's about a cake pull. And one was a bride, and one had a crush on her best friend, and one had to break up with a guy who had been cheating on her and who she just kind of needed to get back into the dating world. And when I did Keep Calm and Carry a Big Drink. Yes, I keep looking over to my books because I have very long titles and I don't want to screw them up. I decided I wanted it to all be from the point of view of the woman who was dating again for the first time in years. And so I knew there were certain things I wanted to see. I knew there would be, in both books, there's something called a cake pull, which is, it's mostly a Southern tradition or a British tradition also, but it's, you put these little silver charms into a 2-layer cake, and when you pull them out, it's supposed to tell you what your future is. And in both books, I wanted whatever the charm was to actually be right about the future, but not to be right in the way they thought that it was right. So I knew that. So I that's one of those you take a couple days and go, okay, what would be the funniest charms to have, and what would the ending of that be? And so for those books, I in every case, when it comes to the process, part of it is just several days of just kind of thinking about, okay, what would my ending be? What is, like, I always know my beginning and I always know my end. What are fun ways to get to that point? And so initially there's no writing going on initially. I mean, initially it's just, well, what do I want to see here? Or what do I want to say? And when I start writing itself, I never start with the beginning. Even though I know how I want it to start and I know how I want it to end, I never start with the beginning or the ending. I start with a scene in the middle of the book that is something that I want to say. And it can be a scene where I'm trying to say something serious, or it can be a scene where I'm just trying to be ridiculous. But I start with that. And then I will write scenes within the book before I start on page 1. So there will be, the character Mel in Keep Calm and Carry a Big Drink I knew it was starting with an Indian wedding, but I didn't have the horse and the runaway groom idea yet. I just knew, like, well, it starts with the wedding. And I knew it ended with her being in Hawaii and having a happy ending, but I didn't know how she was going to get there. And so the first scene I wrote actually had to do with her friend Seema, is the one getting married, the Indian wedding, and Seema's brother comes to visit. And I wrote that scene first because it's a very comical scene. It's a guy she had a crush on in college who, she's living with his sister who's about to move out, but he shows up, and I just wanted it to be, it was just a funny scene. It was a light scene. And, So that's how I did that one. And I like doing scenes in the middle just because to me, I'm constantly trying to observe human nature and how I'm feeling about stuff also. And to me, bringing in a scene and allowing my narrator to talk about how they're feeling about something is a good way for me to start. So the writing process is spend a while looking like you're doing nothing. You're actually thinking, but it looks like you're not doing it. Thank God I'm married to a writer, because I know people who are married to writers who are not writers. And I have one friend who, I always take the girl's side. I'm always on my friend's side when they complain about something their husbands have done. And the one time I have ever just been like, no, you don't understand, is she was complaining about how he went into his writing cave. He went into his home office. And she was dealing with the kids. And at some point she opened the door and he was asleep on the desk. And she was mad about it. And normally if it were any other job, I'd be like, yeah, he should be helping you. He's not working. And I'm like, oh, you have no idea how hard his day might have been. You don't know what it's like. I mean, you play solitaire on the computer. You watch the sitcoms over and over again. It's just training. You're just thinking. And she looked at me, because when she was complaining about it, she just looked at me. She's like, okay. I'm like, you have no idea. None. She's like, all right. Apparently I was being too hard on him. Okay.
That's so funny. I just listened to Brene Brown's podcast, and she was talking about one time her husband took the kids out of town for a weekend so she could write. And she spent 14 hours watching Law and Order. And he came home and he said, so how much did you write? And she said, nothing. I watched 2 days of Law and Order. And he was livid. And then, it took years for him to realize, I got to get out of your way so you can watch 12 hours of Law and Order, and then you write your book.
Right. Because that is part of the process. And it's a weird part of the process to explain to people. Writers know it immediately. Writers actually write about it sometimes. And I think, although I have fun watching writers not write, watching characters not write on TV shows and movies, I don't think most people do, because I think it looks like, well, what did you do with your day? I don't know. Well, it
looks like procrastinating.
Yeah, it looks like procrastinating. It looks like writer's block, which it kind of is. It looks, the whole, I think a lot of us clean our houses when we're procrastinating because, and particularly at the beginning of projects, a lot of people, start doing dishes, start noticing the house is dusty. It's the way that you're thinking while doing something mindless.
Everything but writing.
Everything but writing. You're not actually writing. And so if you're not a writer, it just I don't know how people who aren't writers are married to writers, because to me, it would be like, if you're in Paris and watching someone speak French or something, it's like, this is completely foreign to me. I have no idea what's happening.
You just have to trust the process.
Yeah, exactly. And the taking the kids away for the weekend, I totally get that, because you actually have time to clear your head. But then once you have the time to clear your head, part of that process becomes like, I won a lot of solitaire games and I lost a lot of solitaire games. But then there's something that'll come up out of the blue. I mean, I've had so many ideas come up when I'm not planning for the idea to come up. So it is all part of the process. It's bizarre, but it's part of the process. And it's also, I think, why, because I've had several friends who have written a novel or are trying to write a novel, like their first novel. And I think for somebody who's not normally a writer, they get discouraged and they don't finish because it's such a weird process. It just looks like you're not doing stuff. And then you are suddenly doing stuff, and then you're not doing stuff again. But if you're a writer, that's all, that it's all that. But for somebody who doesn't know, it just looks like, well, I tried and I wrote one page and it sucked. And then I went and cleaned my house. And it's like, yeah, so you're in week 1 is all you're saying.
So you're a writer.
4. Yeah, you're a writer. Maybe you're in week 4. I know a lot of writers. I think actually Brene Brown has said this. I know a lot of writers who haven't gotten much done during COVID because there's just too much on our minds that we can't clear our minds in that way of watching Law and Order for 14 hours. Mm-hmm. We can't clear our minds enough to actually create right now.
Which makes sense, because you think, I have all this extra time. I should be so able to create. Yeah. And everyone is having such a hard time.
Yeah. And it's, I think everyone is having I think that's part of it. Everyone is having a hard time. And I mean, maybe there's somebody out there who truly is totally fine with just being by themselves and getting food delivered and not leaving their house and not worried about any family members. But I've yet to meet them. And I think we are, I mean, I can mostly speak for my girlfriends. I haven't heard too many men complain about this, but it's hard and we don't know how long it's going to be. And I feel like there are days when I can listen to everybody vent because I'm having an okay day and they're having a hard day. And then there are days when I need someone to listen to me because I'm having a hard time. And, our kids are in college right now. I feel like my kid's actually okay with the online stuff. He actually likes it. But he misses his friends, and I get why he misses his friends. And then I know other people who, their kids are not doing well with online, particularly. I mean, my godson is in first grade right now, and this is not, he's doing better this year. Kindergarten, he just had no interest in, being online.
It was impossible.
It was, yeah. And I remember, okay, I'm going to tell this story. It was funny to me because I do not live with my child, I live with my child. This child is my friend's child. When he was 5, around May. So they're set, and parents are doing this all over the country. They're setting the kid up with the Zoom and the computer, putting it on the dining room table. And there was a day when, dad puts him on the dining room table, clicks in the Zoom, and he starts to walk away. And the kid just closed the book and walked away. And his dad was like, no, goes, gets the kid, brings him back. And they go through this like 3 times. And the kid said, I don't understand. You tell me I'm only allowed a certain amount of screen time. I'm not wasting it on this. And I totally got that. And again, because it's not my kid, but I totally got what he meant. Like from a point of view, this has got to be like, oh no, if I get computer time, I don't need to see my teacher.
No.
I have computer time.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So I think we're all going through, I mean, my experience is we're all going through stuff and we're getting through it. But, for some people, it's harder than others. I think, for older people, I think the two groups, from my observations, just my group is older people are having a harder time of it because they have to be safer. I mean, not that everyone shouldn't be safe, but you read the stories and it's like the college kids right now are not all necessarily being safe. And so they, I think it's harder for the older people. I really think it's hard for the moms of little kids. I do not know of a mom of a little kid right now who's saying like, oh no, it's fine. I don't know. And if she were, we'd have to commit her and that would be a whole
She's
thing.
lying. She's lying. Well, and it'd be one thing, it's hard enough to be dealing with a pandemic, but then we're dealing with everything else on top of it, the Black Lives Matter and the unrest and the election and the, being very worried about our democracy. Like it's all a bit much.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I won't get too political, but yes, we are. I
feel free.
Okay. I was a history major in college, and there are things that Trump is doing that dictators do right before they become dictators. And it's playbook stuff. I mean, it's by the book stuff. So there's that going on. Our family participated in Black Lives Matter protests, and there's scary stuff going on. And I was scared of the cops initially because, particularly at the beginning, they were, and they continue to harass protesters. But I mean, I was scared of the cops. I'm even more afraid of the militia, I didn't even know who certain right-wing extremist groups were up until the first presidential debate. And suddenly, I didn't really know these people still existed. And I certainly didn't think that there was a president who would give his endorsement of them on a national debate. I mean, that was to me like another example of, yes, we're not just dealing with COVID. We're dealing with politics. We're dealing with, there's just a whole lot going on. I don't know what we did to piss off 2020, but I think the breakup is necessary. Let's just jump to New Year's because I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping there are going to be some funny things that get written about COVID later that maybe we're just not right now at a place where we can do it. I have a friend who lives in Taiwan, and they got hit before we did. And they were all shut down. I mean, China shut down in January, and they are a communist country, so they shut down in a way that even Italy wasn't able to shut down that complete. I mean, it was immediate. And he told me, via Facebook, he was telling me about their daughter being on online school for a few weeks. And I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, that could be really funny. I mean, can you imagine if your kid was home with a few weeks and like trying to do school in Zoom? How ridiculous. And now I'm like, yeah, well, somebody should write about that, but it's not going to be me.
Yeah, here we are. Okay, speaking of all of this, are you wearing Christmas jammies right now?
Yes, I am. Oh my God. Yes. These are just snowman jammies, but I have 2 different sets of Grinch pajamas, and I wear them all year. They delight me.
Well, we got to find our joy where we can find it.
Oh, like I said, I'm thinking of keeping the Christmas tree up until there's a COVID vaccine. I'm determined.
I think that's
my friends that wouldn't be surprised if in the middle of July I'm like, Christmas party, it's happening. Come over.
Because we need a little Christmas right this very
minute now. Yeah. Yes, Chris. I forgot about that. Yeah, I wear a lot of crappy clothes right now. Also during COVID, I did manage to get my jeans on once a month or 2 ago, and I was very proud of myself for that because I put on some COVID weight. It's not so much that I worry about it.
I think everyone's in the same boat. I think we just have to be very gentle and forgiving with ourselves right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also once things get back to normal, we'll all be going for walks again. We also, we had COVID, and then in California, we had all the fires that were going on for a while. And so
you can walk.
Yeah, you couldn't even walk. It went from wearing masks, which was bad enough, to suddenly wearing N95 masks if you just wanted to go outside. It was because it was 2020.
So bad.
1.2. It was just like, because of course, like when the earthquake happened, it's like, of course it did. Like, I'm surprised.
Oh, the day Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and then there was a huge earthquake, and we couldn't go outside because of the smoke. Like,
yeah, it was just like, okay, I'm done. I don't. I'm the lobster in the pot now. I'm done. It's boiling now. I thought it was bad before. No, it can get that to me is the problem with 2020 is, it can get so much worse than this. Great.
We have to stop saying that because it's proven every day. We're done. It's fine.
We're done. We're done. We're ready for some good news. We're done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have big plans for Thanksgiving, which is I'm going away to a very deserted place. And I just bought your book to read while I'm there. I got it on Amazon. Is that where everyone has to get it?
Yes, it's at Amazon. Yes. And it's by Kim Gruenenfelder. And I need to let everybody know that because unfortunately there is another book called My Ex's Wedding that has nothing to do with my book. It is a romance, and I think it's a serious book. But so it's Kim Gruenenfelder. So if you get it, like there's a woman on the cover with a glass of champagne who's clearly at a wedding. So you'll see what my book is. But yes, it's Amazon, and it's depending on when this comes out, I don't know what the price is, but usually it's on some sort of sale depending on the day. So,
well, I will link to it on my website too, so people could just go in and buy it.
Great. Yay. Thank you.
It was so fun catching up with you.
Oh, it was fun catching up with you too.
Keep up the good work. Keep writing books, please.
Oh, thank you. Like I said, after COVID, there will be another book.
Yeah.
It'll be something. You were saying, what are you working on? It's like, I don't know, a lot of things.
Something
I'm
will come out.
My grandmother's silver. I'm really excited about it.
All right. Any parting words for us?
No, thank you for listening to me babble for so long. I got to talk for an hour straight. It's good. I never get to talk for an hour straight.
It was so fun.
Thank you. I had a great time, and thank you for having me back. This is one of the more fun podcasts. I get very nervous on some of them, and this one I'm just like, we're just talking. It's just chill.
There's a couple of chicks talking, having coffee.
Exactly.
All right. Goodbye.
All right. Bye.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Kim Gruenenfelder for sharing her story, and special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms. Thanks for listening. See you next time.